All right, hello YouTube. I think that's all three now. I've got the three stooges going here. We've got Kickstarter, Facebook, and YouTube. Give me just a second, and I'll get rolling here. All right, guys. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth between the chats on Kickstarter, Facebook, and YouTube. So I will do my best to address comments and questions as we go. I will also decided to abandon my attempt to tweet along with this. I'm not great at Twitter. I really don't care for it, to be perfectly frank with you. And it's really hard for me to use because I talk so much, I can't really cut it down to 140 characters. So trying to live tweet and run three chats at the same time, just like one chat too many. So without further ado, I want to say thank you to everybody who's tuning in right now to watch us live. My name is Carmelo Chimera. I am the founder of Chimera's Comics. I am one of the many contributing creators to the Cellar Door horror anthology, and I'm the editor on the project as well, and I guess the publisher now. I want to take some time with you tonight to talk about Cellar Door. We had a campaign that's ending tonight. We're going to talk about that in a second. I want to thank everybody who helped make it possible. I want to talk a little bit about the stories that are inside and the creators that are inside and give you the behind the scenes. I want to answer your questions, tell you a little bit about some of what to expect with fulfillment stuff coming up. And also I'm going to give away a page of original artwork, okay? I may not give away this specific one. I have like 15 different ones. This is just kind of to show off what I've got here. This is from Guy Casper, who's a longtime member of the Chimera's Comics community. And he drew and inked this himself by hand, as well as one of the Cellar Door stories that I wrote it's also called Cellar Door. So I'm going to give this away at the end of the hour. If you want to win the artwork, you don't have to be present to win. I will contact you afterward, but I'm going to select from amongst our backers. Right now, there's over 230 backers. And so if you haven't backed yet, if you're with us on Kickstarter, maybe you already have. If you're with us on Facebook or on YouTube and you haven't, go to our Kickstarter page. You can search for Cellar Door, or I'll put the link up in just a second. Pledge even $1 and you're in. I'm going to use a random number picker to pick a number 1 through however many backers we have, and I'm going to give this away. So give me just a second here for the folks tuning in on the other platforms. I'm going to go ahead and include the link now. All right, it's already on Facebook, and now it's on YouTube as well. Let's see if we've got anybody tuning in. Link real quick. Okay. All right, it's like Inception. I can see myself live on my phone right now. All righty. Okay, and we're gonna share to there. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about the campaign. I haven't checked it in an hour. Let's see where we're at. All right, as near as I can tell, we're at $11,984. Our goal was $11,000, which means congratulations, we did it. I have been trying to contain myself all day. I'm so very excited about this. I want to tell you right to see me say thank you, because this is like a ton of work for us. And we do it because we love it, right? But telling stories, it only matters if there's people to read them and enjoy them and love them. You know, a story that doesn't have a reader, it's like a bird that can't fly. And so I told my wife a bit ago, money is a sign of success. I take the number of backers and the amount of interest, and the money is a way of speaking, is a way of you telling us that you want it. It's a way of voting that for this thing to exist. So when I see those, I feel like I'm an actual comic author. I'm an actual comic publisher. And every single dollar, every pledge, every like, every backer, every share, every comment, all of it was a part of this and making it happen. So thank you so very much. I want to have some fun in the next hour with you. These things are usually pretty cool. So if you have questions, comments, let me have them. I want to talk to you. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to tell you more about the fulfillment and stuff like that. Talk to you about some of my favorite stories in here. So, let's do it. I want to start by talking about the creators who are involved here, because they're all awesome, all fantastic. This is a project now that's not just funded by the Chimera's Comics community. It was created by the Chimera's Comics community. Everybody in here is either a customer or a friend or a fan or a family member, somebody from within our group who, wanted to participate because they love horror, because they love Lovecraftian Twilight Zone horror. And so we pick these people one at a time. I'd like to tell you where it started. We got Ryan Flaherty is one of the creators, and he's with us right now on Kickstarter. This all started with me and Ryan. Ryan was editing Magnificent, which is my first graphic novel, and he pitched the idea of doing a horror anthology. And I'd love to hear your opinion. Why do you think horror of all things is so good for anthologies? Because there's a lot of horror anthologies in comics and in movies, and they're awesome, right? I love horror anthologies. I love Creepshow. I love Trick or Treat. It's one of my favorite Halloween movies. So I don't know, what is it about horror that works for anthologies? That's a good question. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But Ryan and I were talking about it, and at the time we were going to call it Dark Matters. That was the original title of Cellar Door, was Dark Matters. And it was kind of a spacey play. Back then it was going to be a little bit harder sci-fi. And it was an idea of Ryan thinks that the primal use of campfire stories is the origin of horror. And I think Ryan might be right about that. I think there's something about the shortness of stories that go into an anthology that suits horror. It's actually a really interesting point Ryan makes, is that it's easy to scan horror in short bursts. So once the monster is revealed, it loses something. Ryan's right. Stephen King wrote, and he's written many books on writing. And Stephen King explained that there's nothing scarier than what the reader's coming up with in their imagination, right? So once you reveal it, it's hard to keep up that tension. You also see this actually in the Twilight Zone, which obviously a lot of these stories are inspired by the Twilight Zone, an anthology series itself. And you see it because in the latter half of the series, they went to an hour-long format after being a half an hour. And it was really hard for them to keep up the tension. There's not very many of the best Twilight Zone episodes that are in that hour-long format. It used to be the setup, the turn, and then the twist ending. And that was it. And that was 3 acts. It was about 20 minutes, 8 minutes an act, half-hour program with commercials. But then when they got to the hour, that middle act dragged, because you've got to keep up that tension about the reveal. Or you end up doing the reveal too early because you can't keep up the tension, and it sucks. So, Ryan, that's a really good point, actually. It reminds me of something I heard from Sam Raimi. Any Evil Dead fans out there? Shout out. I want to hear. Sometimes we got our friends from the Cult Classic Horror Show tune in, and I know they're all Evil Dead fans if you guys are out there. But I met Sam Raimi at Northwestern last year. I was very fortunate because my friend's wife works there and invited us to a presentation he was giving to some of the film students. Yes, Spider-Man 3 is underrated. Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. It's wildly underrated. So Sam Raimi was up there talking about how he broke into film. And at the time, he wanted to do comedies. He's a big fan of the Three Stooges. So if you know his work, you know that you can see that Three Stooges influence. And it was Sam Raimi's college roommate, Robert Tepper, who said to him, let's do horror. And at the time, they didn't have quite the same peer-to-peer distribution that I have the advantage of with Kickstarter and Facebook and so forth. I can go find my audience anywhere. But there wasn't such a thing before. What was very special about horror was that horror fans will go see a movie because it's horror. Not necessarily because it's looks specifically good or because they care about the characters or the creators. That's certainly the case, though. But you'll also just go see a movie because you want to see if it scares you. I'm a big horror fan. I watch lots of movies I know nothing about. I want to see if they scare me, right? And that was the case back then, too. So you could make an indie horror movie. You could make it cheap. You could find distribution at grindhouse cinemas all over the country, and people would come see it by virtue of it being horror. And that's why so many great creators broke in that way. And Sam Raimi didn't want to do horror, he told us. He wanted to do comedy. And then he thought of horror as a different kind of joke. The joke has, usually 3 beats: set up, and then subvert your expectations. And when we subvert your expectations with irony, we produce a laugh. But we can do the same beat: set up, twist, And instead of getting a laugh, we could get you to scream, right? Kevin Folliard wisely pointed out, horror and comedy are so much alike. It's both scary and funny. In fact, scary how funny it is. And that's when Sam went for horror, right? And then he got really big doing that because then he started to carve out that niche of horror comedy. So there is a lot of great wordplay going on Kickstarter right now. So if you're with us on YouTube or Facebook, I'm not even going to just read all the comments. You got to get over there. You got to see Flaherty and Folliard are going at it now. It's great. Just keeping an eye over on our on my personal Facebook. I've shared this there as well. I don't want to miss any comments if anybody's talking to me over there too. And it looks like there's a few people. So anywho, back to what I was talking about. Guys, if the white noise is too loud in the background, let me know. I can kill the fan. So anyways, back to Ryan and I. We were going to do this horror anthology, Dark Matters, right? That was the original title. Turns out already a comic book called Dark Matters. Actually, I think it might have got turned into a TV show. So probably a pretty big comic. Kind of hate him for it because it's a great title. Dark Matter, if you don't know what that is like makes up like more than half the universe. We know that it should exist. We don't really know that it does. We have no way of measuring it. It's sort of, for me, a metaphor of how dark and scary and big the universe is. But anyways, we went back to the drawing board. And over the next year or so, I became more and more influenced myself by the works of H.P. Lovecraft. And that goes to what Ryan says about revealing the monster, right? Lovecraft's monsters are iconic now, but not because he drew them, so all of them in such detail, but because artists who followed all were inspired by Lovecraft and all drew these amazing images based off his descriptions, but his descriptions are somewhat vague, and that's because it is scarier. So that's something I love about Lovecraftian monsters is they like baffle the imagination. There's a tentacle here and a claw there, and like how does all of that fit into one thing? Oh, I should mention I've been drinking. I would like to give a shout out to my former college professor and now good friend and community member, Matthew Tuttle. Matt gave me this delicious bottle of New Glarus Brewing Serendipity Ale. It is Wisconsin ale brewed with apples, cranberries, and cherries. It is a sipping beer with an incredibly high alcohol content per volume. And so I thought tonight was a great special occasion to break it out. So Matt, if you're watching, thank you very much. You're a valued part of our community. I appreciate it. And not just for the beer. The constant interaction on Facebook is what makes it so great. Now, back to Cellar Door. So as I started to recruit more creators, some of the projects got a little less sci-fi and some were a little more sci-fi. Ryan's stories are both really hard sci-fi, right? He's got this awesome memory manipulation story, and it's horror, it's like moral horror, right? It's kind of that quirky horror comedy. And then he's got another story we just added called Skinned, my personal favorite in the book, and it is absolutely terrifying and grotesque. And it is, again, hard sci-fi. And I'll talk more about the stories in just a bit. But I want to give you more about the creators and where they all came from. So for my stories, I recruited Danny Romero, who works at our LaGrange store. She's the manager there. And she's a very talented artist. And she's working with me right now on the prologue to the prequel to Magnificent. I'll get back to that later. Guy is over with us on Facebook. Hey, Guy, how you doing? Guy contributed the wonderful artwork we're going to be giving him too, but I'll get back to that. So I recruited Danny, and Danny drew my story. But then Danny had her own she wanted to write and draw completely herself. And that one's called Badland Lights. So I had Danny come on to help me with mine, the Oedipus Paradox. And that's hard sci-fi, time travel. So right now we're still real much in the time travel family. And Danny's story deals with aliens and it's teen on the run. It's great. And even just if you read her description of it, it sounds like Rod Serling introducing an episode of The Twilight Zone. So in any case, she does Badland Lights, and then she reaches out to recruits Rafael Nieves, who is a member of our community, shops at our LaGrange store. He is a long-time and very successful comic book author. He's written for Marvel. He's written for Moonstone. He has done adaptations of movies like Nosferatu. He's done his own short horror stories. And he wanted to be in this with us. Raph had a story that was horror that he wanted to do a series. He's been trying to do it for like 20 years. And to me, it's sort of like Mallrats meets Dexter, right? And he asked if it would be a good fit for this and if he could do like the pilot in it. And that's Blackbirds on the Road. And I said, yeah. So that's where we started to go a little further afield from sci-fi. And I realized sci-fi is broader in the sense of like the Twilight Zone, right? This is where that comes in. It's sort of like not every episode of the Twilight Zone dealt with aliens or time travel or outer space. They did sometimes, But the point is that Twilight Zone always had that twist that made you think of the world a little bit differently, right? Sometimes it was a world that looked very much like our own, but then wasn't. And that's still sci-fi to me. So I thought to myself, you know, that kind of jives with the sort of cosmic horror Lovecraft is known for. And so that's what kind of opened up the doors a little bit more. I asked Kevin Folliard and his cousin JT Malloy to do a story while JT was signing at our store. He did a comic called Sapphire Specter, and he was signing it at Chimera's Comics. I said, JT, Kevin, you guys want to do a short horror story? Kevin is a very prolific and very successful horror writer. He's done a number of collected prose anthologies in the Christmas Terror Tales series. More Christmas Terror Tales, Valentine's Terror Tales. He's done them all. So I asked if they wanted to do one, and they said, yeah. And then each of them had a separate idea they wanted to follow. So they have multiple contributions. And so it continued to grow like that. My brother, I want to give a shout out to right now, is one of my favorite people in the whole world, top two easily. And he is publishing his own novel, The Crusader, next week. It's a young adult novel. It was published by Gen Z Publishing. And he wrote a short horror story that truly bothered me. I remember giving him my editor's notes on it. And at one point in the margin, I had to write the word brutal and underlined it 3 times. For a 17-year-old, he has a twisted imagination. But I'm super proud of him. I'll talk more about The Crusader a little bit if you guys are interested. So Nicholas came aboard. Danny, again, recruited from amongst our community. Brian Fisher, who is a customer at the store, used to own Defiant Comics, great guy. Real pleasure to work with him. He wrote a short story for it, and so on. And so it continued to grow. Rafael Nieves brought on Tony Maldonado and Wesley Wong for his story. I brought on my cousin Francesca and Guy Casper for another story, and that's where the team came from. So most of these people I knew personally. Now, last but certainly not least is my wife, Christine, who had a nightmare in college that was so disturbing she'd written it down. She told me about it years later. I said it would make a good short story. And when she knew I was getting ready to do Cellar Door, she said, I would like to do a story. And I said, is it that nightmare you wrote down? She goes, yeah. So we recruited an artist, Jack Haynes, super talented, super great guy to work with. And I'll be working with him more in the future. And Jack brought her story, The Shed, to life. Finally, rounding it out, I got a funny story to tell you about Tim Mcilvain. Mcilvain is my oldest childhood friend. And he is not a professional artist, but he's one of the better cartoonists that I know. And he came to my store in LaGrange a couple years ago for 24-hour Comics Day. It's exactly what it sounds like. We stay up for 24 hours making comics. If you think I'm manic now, you should have seen me then. And I had these little half sheets that people could fold in half, kids could fold in half, and draw comic books. He took one and just doodled with crayon a story called Pumpkin Patch. And it was simple. His cartoony style is disarming, and it is super twisted, scary ending. And it was a perfect 3-act formula. I was blown away by how he just it just popped into his head, this perfect 3 acts. There were 3 pages in the folder. He did 3 pages. It was perfect. I asked him if he wanted to reprise it for this. He actually did redraw it for you. I'm not going to send you something made of crayon. This time it's colored pencil. And he redid the entire thing, and that's a great little tease twist at the end there. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. So I'd still love to hear questions, guys, because I can keep talking all night about how awesome Cellar Door is. I really love it. I think it's going to be a great. Project. I'd like to remind you guys, if you want to win the original artwork, I've got some of Guy Casper's original artwork I'll be giving away. You have to back the campaign. You go over to bit.ly. Links on YouTube. I've put them in the description on Facebook, and of course, if you're on Kickstarter, you're already with us. Back even $1. And you'll see that you'll be selected potentially as a winner. I'm going to use a random number picker and pick a number 1 through however many backers we have. So please, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and throw some down. Now, I know I promised to do some of this a few weeks ago. The last live stream we did happen the day that Stan Lee died, and so we obviously had to talk about that and his contributions to comics. So I won't revisit that here. It's time to talk about our project, right? So without further ado, I will tell you about some of the stories that are in Cellar Door. First off, the story that runs throughout is called Cellar Door. I wrote it. Guy Casper drew it. My cousin Francesca water horror artwork like this ever. Both of them are so much more immensely talented than I am. I am blessed to have written for And then seeing how my script got interpreted by Guy, and then how Guy's artwork got interpreted by Francesca. You've never seen in Eerie Comics. It's really fantastic. You're going to love it. And the reason I wrote Cellar Door is because I saw Guy's cover with the monster, who I call the Reader. And I said to myself, the monster in the basement that eats stories. And at the time, I had just watched Creepshow with my wife for the first time. I'd never seen it. Excellent movie. And that whole movie takes place in the context of a comic book. And so I thought an anthology needs something to tie it together. So Cellar Door ties the other stories together. And in it, a writer has retreated to a secluded manor where he's going to try to overcome writer's block. And he gets his wish because there's a monster there that eats his stories, and he has to keep feeding it stories to stay alive. So each of the stories in the anthology are stories that the author has to feed to the reader. And some people said to me, Carmelo, it's an indictment of toxic fandom. And I said, awesome. And some people say, oh, man, it's like The Raven. You adapted The Raven. And I said, okay, pretty cool. So I think maybe we've caught lightning in a bottle with that story, and I hope you're going to love it. Next up, from Kevin Folliard and JT Malloy, is Digger's Grove. Now, this is an homage to 80s slasher horror, and it is about a group of teenagers who go to a cemetery seeking out a good scare, and then they find the sharp end of a gravedigger's shovel. It's got the 80s slasher monster. It's got the cool colors. It's got the curvy women. It's got it's a lot like a Return of the Living Dead. If you've never seen Return of the Living Dead, really reminds me of that stylistically. Tons of fun, twist ending. Really enjoy Digger's Grove. Lots of the press reviewers have told me it's their favorite. So that's another great story. And remember, if you haven't pledged yet, with a pledge of even $1, you can get a random short story from Cellar Door. I'll give you one of the 14 comic books. So maybe you'll get lucky. Of course, for only $12, you can have the whole thing digitally. Now, back to the stories inside. While I'm on Kevin and JT, I'll tell you about their other contributions. Kevin, as I told you before, writes prose horror. And so he wrote a story called The Beetle Problem. And The Beetle Problem is like, there was an old lady who swallowed a fly. But it more reminds me of The Simpsons, in the episode where there are lizards that are eating the birds, and they find out, hey, it gets rid of the pigeons, but then we have lizards, so we bring in snakes to eat the lizards, but then we bring in African gorillas to pound on the snakes, and then they'll freeze over at wintertime, and it just keeps going like that. Well, Kevin took that and put a horror twist on it, so it's still fun. It's a very fun read. It made me chuckle, but it's got monsters and aliens and demons, and so it's very like, oh, this is fun. It's a fun horror. I think you'll like The Beetle Problem. JT did a 2-page story called Sapphire Specter Fetch Quest. I mentioned Sapphire Specter before. JT's superhero, the Sapphire Specter, I think her name is Sylvia Sloan, and she has the power to die. And when she dies, she becomes a ghost who can interact with other ghosts. She fights demons. She helps ghosts finish their unfinished business as this hero, the Sapphire Specter. And then she can come back to life again. Well, in Fetch Quest, she meets a ghost dog and has to try to figure out what kind of unfinished business a ghost canine would have. Punch me right in the feels, that one, JT. Thanks for that. Fetch Quest, you'll love it. Back to Cellar Door. Since I mentioned The Beetle Problem, I'll tell you about the other 2 prose stories. There's 3 prose stories in there. The other one is from my brother, the Clockwork Man. My brother's not the Clockwork Man, though he did play the Clockwork Man in our short film of the same name over on YouTube. No, my brother wrote the Clockwork Man. And the Clockwork Man is a story about 3 travelers who find an abandoned cathedral in the outskirts of France in the search for eternal life. But there they find actually they may meet their own death in their quest for eternal life. It features a monster, a character design that Nicholas came up with. This plague doctor mask that to Nicholas represented death itself. And his writing just blew me away. I mean, he's 17. I've been reading his writing for a long time. And I feel like I'm always lagging behind where he is as a creator. So, you'd read his stuff when he's like 10 or 11 and it's got all these great ideas and then just like needs substance and structure. And then I read this. I was one paragraph in. I stopped my wife. I said, honey, read this first paragraph. It's unbelievable. He brought in his real life knowledge of French history and geography for this. And it's extremely brutal. I think also what I liked about The Clockwork Man is that it deals with this idea of how much can you change about something before it's no longer that thing, right? In philosophy, we often talk about a broom. If the head of the broom breaks, you unscrew it, you put on a new head. But then the stem breaks later of the broom and you replace that. Do you even have the same broom anymore, right? So that's what The Clockwork Man's about, just scarier and more violent. So again, guys, if you have questions, if you want to know about fulfillment, rewards, if you want to know about timelines, anything, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to keep going. Real quick, while I'm on Nicholas, remember next Friday night at Chimera's Comics Oak Lawn is the book release party for Nicholas's novel, The Crusader. Again, putting me to shame. He's 17. He actually has a traditionally published book from Gen Z Publishing. And one day he's going to be too famous to deign to visit his brother's stores. So please come meet him now while he's young. Nicholas is an accomplished filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, short story writer, and this is his first novel. So I hope you all come out and show him some support. If you want it and you've backed Cellar Door and you want to read The Crusader, you can add it on to your rewards. So if you just increase your pledge by $16, at the end we'll ask you what it was for. You'll tell us The Crusader. In fact, if you don't increase before the end, that's fine too. You'll have an opportunity. There'll be a checkout system with your reward survey. The last prose story is from Brian Fisher, who I mentioned to you before. Brian wrote a story that feels very real to me. It feels like it's something that he like resonates with. And it's called The Bone Man. And it's about an artist who's trying to come up with a creature and his work takes on a life of its own. And so I think it was something that I found very scary. His writing was very tense. It kept me on the edge of my seat. And at the same time, I think despite the fact that it's a fantastical story, it made me feel like, no, I see this, right? As a creative person, like sometimes your work can take over. It can take over you. And that's a frightening thing. So anybody who's ever made anything or ever had like a hobby or a project that got away from them, I think The Bone Man's really going to resonate with you. Back to some of the comic books that are inside. I'd like to tell you a little bit about The Shed, which my wife made. So The Shed is, to me, the scariest story in Cellar Door because it is the most real. There's no monsters. There's no aliens. It does still have that twist, but it's not fantastical. And that's what makes it hard to read. It's one of the shorter stories. It's 5 pages. I can't tell you a whole lot about it without ruining it for you, except to say that there is a shed in a place lost to time. And in a place where time has stopped, life has no meaning. It's pretty brutal. And again, I want to remind you all, Cellar Door is a hard R rating. So if you have not backed yet, but you are squeamish, this book may not be for you, okay? There is violence, there is murder, there are monsters. Some of the themes are very mature, okay? So, or immature, depending how you look at it. So The Shed definitely falls into that category. Frankly, it's uncomfortable to read. But fortunately, we found Jack Haynes, who's an artist who really appreciated the message there, and I think he treated it with the seriousness it deserved. Moving on from The Shed, I'd like to tell you about Blackbirds on the Road, which is from Rafael Nieves. Now, Raph is such a good guy, and he's been such a good mentor, I think really to everybody who worked on Cellar Door. And his story, Blackbirds, it really feels to me like it's Mallrats meets Dexter, right? It's about 2 comic creators who are on a road trip going from convention to convention and the horrors that they face on the road. I pressed Raph to tell me whether the events of this book really happened. And he indeed said that some of these did in fact happen and some are exaggerated, and he wouldn't tell me which is which. To look at the artwork, you can almost pick him and Tony Maldonado out as the main characters. So I think this may be a true story. Let's hope it's not. That's all I'm going to say. So that is the Badlands. No, excuse me. That's Blackbirds on the Road. Colored by Wesley Wong. Wesley, we're super lucky to work with. Wesley is an inker and a colorist and an illustrator. He's worked for Marvel on the Marvel Masterworks. Wesley did the restoration work on the colors and the inks of some of those older books. He's truly fantastic. He's extremely talented, very prolific, and we're very lucky to have his name on this book. Frankly, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome looking at guys like him and Raph and artists like Guy and thinking to myself, man, these people are so talented. Like, what am I doing here with them? I see we're joined by a friend and one of my mentors, Stuart Karubis, over on Facebook. I want to give Stuart a shout. I would not be who I am today without Stuart. And if I could get you off the bench to draw something, I would publish it in a heartbeat. So if you ever rethink your comics career, please let me know. Stuart is extremely talented as an artist, and he taught me almost everything I know about comic books. I confused the title a moment ago, Blackbirds with Badlands, so I'm going to go ahead and use that as my segue. Badlands, Badland Lights, it's called, by Danny Romero, is a story about a nomadic teenager who's run away from home on the run and tries to hold up in like a subdivision that's under construction and finds something sinister waiting in that subdivision. It is a creepy story. It is all silent, which is very cool. It's neat because without being preachy in any way, it does, touch on some themes of sort of like, what it's like living on the road and what it's like not having anywhere where you feel safe. And I think she did a good job of capturing that feeling. And that's really scary. I see that, oh, hang on. There's a separate Q&A button on the thing. Oh, man. I didn't know that. I was just looking at the chat. Donovan Coronado has a question for me, and I'm so sorry, Donovan, that I missed you earlier. I didn't know there was a Q&A thing separate. I don't know why they would do that. So Donovan wants to know, are there any Kickstarter projects planned after this one? So Donovan, I'm still fulfilling the Chimera's Comics Community Kickstarter, and that'll be done this month, and Cellar Door will be done in February. So I'm not going to do anything until those are all in everybody's hands. However, yes, I have 3 Kickstarters planned at least in the next year and a half. And they're going to be awesome. So if you want a little preview of what's to come, definitely make sure to back this campaign, anyone watching, because I will make sure you guys are the first to know about any kind of upcoming campaign. And also, I like to have returning backer rewards. So there will be bonuses that you can only get if you've backed Cellar Door and then you back a future project. So what am I working on? The first thing I'm working on with Jack Haynes is called Fake News, and it is a political conspiracy thriller in the not too distant future where the government has created a space force to fight a war in the stars. But the whole thing might be a big hoax. So it follows a reporter and a White House aide and a soldier in the Space Force as they try to get to the bottom of what's really going on with this Space Force. Yes, it's political. I know I may lose some people there. I did my best to make sure that politically speaking, it was fair, while not being silent on my personal beliefs on the issue. But also at the same time, I really wanted it to make a good political thriller. I love 24. It's my favorite show of all time. This is sort of my attempt to write 24 meets The West Wing. And then, to do it with a comic book, you need that cool visual component. And to me, that's the space component. Drawing the space stations and designing the space armors and the suits is going to add that cool factor. So I think it's timely. I think it's exciting. I've gotten great feedback from people who read the script. Everybody says, well, where's the next one? I don't even know the first one yet. So yeah, Fake News is coming to you early next year. The big project Danny and I are working on is the Magnificent prequel, Magnificent Genesis. And the last Magnificent fulfilled 2 years late. It is the last time I will have a Kickstarter that fulfills that late, ever. And so I want to finish, or at least get to 90% of Magnificent Genesis before we do that Kickstarter. So Danny's pace is going to kind of determine when I launch that campaign. But it is twice the length of the original Magnificent, and I think it's really, really great. It's better than the first one to me because it's very timely, and I think it's the story we need, right? Have you ever watched the news and thought, God, I wish we had a real superhero? Because that's what this is about. What does a superhero do to a world with domestic violence and mass shootings? And what do those things do to that superhero? So that's what Magnificent Genesis is going to be about. If you back Cellar Door and you haven't already backed Cellar Door, you can go to bit.ly/open the cellar to back. And I will share my the cover to Magnificent Genesis with backers of Cellar Door first. I will share it with you in the next couple of days. It was drawn by my cousin Carmelo Chimera, inked by Wesley Wong, who we've talked about before, and who's a member of Cellar Door. And it's going to be watercolored by Francesca. That's still in progress. Francesca Chimera, my cousin. I see Guy is with me on Facebook, ready to collaborate again. That makes me so happy because I have a very special project planned for Guy that I'm not quite ready to talk about publicly because I haven't talked about it with him yet. And then Donovan, I'm going to go ahead and give you a tease of the project I'm most excited about next year. You guys want to know what Kickstarters I'm going to do next? I am going to do something that you've never seen on Kickstarter before. I am going to do a Kickstarter that will rewrite the rules of how Kickstarters work. Have I built up your expectations enough? Now take those and double it because that's how cool this is going to be. Check it out. Every year, we host 24-hour Comics Day at Chimera's Comics. It is an international event where artists take a challenge to draw a 24-page comic in 24 hours. Not all of us finish. Not all of us get all the way through. Some of us do finish. Some of us finish shorter comics. It's a great way to celebrate creativity. We've done it for 5 years. We only took a break this last year. I'm going to do a 24-hour Kickstarter campaign for 24-hour Comics Day. One day, one campaign, one chance to pledge. It'll have a relatively low goal so we can make sure to hit it. And we will collect whatever we create on 24-hour Comics Day, and that's going to be what we kickstart. It's going to be a one-of-a-kind anthology, team-up, created live before your very eyes because we're going to live stream the whole thing. A 24-hour live stream for a 24-hour Kickstarter on 24-hour Comics Day. I don't know what the final product will look like. It's probably going to be awesome. It's probably going to be a bit of a hodgepodge. I promise you, though, whatever it looks like, there will be nothing like it that you've ever seen and nothing like it that you're ever going to see again. So Donovan, that's what I've got planned for Kickstarter next year. I hope that's exciting enough because I'm certainly excited. Kevin Folliard has commented that he wants to see Cellar Door Volume 2. And Brian Fisher also said that to me earlier. And I had a member of our community email us with some artwork he's done. It's amazing. And says he wants to do Cellar Door 2. And I'm blown away. I can't believe people want a sequel. And it's not even done yet. And that's how excited everyone is. Normally, I'm the one that's running wild with the next project. Yes, I will do Cellar Door 2. Especially if people like Kevin and Guy and Brian want to come back and do another one, then yes, absolutely. If I can find a team of people who's just as excited and talented, even if it's the same people or just a few differences, and I would love to bring in new talent as well. But if there's people who want to do it, then I will absolutely see it happen. In fact, I've toyed with a few ideas. Ryan's got Cellar Door 2, Back in Black. I like that. That's a good title. I was toying with the problem with it is it kind of requires a seasonal release, but I wanted to do maybe Cellar Door Dead of Winter because I'm dreading the cold weather coming up and that has now visited us. And so I thought maybe we could do something that's like loosely winter themed. I don't know. I'm going to float it. I am also going for an all ages anthology. We have at least one member of the Chimera's Comics community who does all ages comics for kids and asked me if I would publish them. And so if that's something you're interested in, if you know somebody who does comics for all ages, if you're a writer, an artist, hit me up because I would love to know if you'd be interested in doing an all ages kind of kids fun, cartoony, family friendly graphic novel. This Cellar Door is hard R. I can't stress that enough. If you're watching, do not pledge confusing my words. This is not the all ages project. Hey, we got Chaos Knight over at YouTube says he can write. Chaos Knight, drop me a direct message, email me, connect with me on Facebook, whatever, and I'd love to see what you got. We have a stable of artists who are extremely talented. We can shop it around, see who's interested, see what your budget is, and help you find somebody, make it happen. I'm starting to feel like a real publisher. This is really kind of amazing. Guy's in for the sequel. Yes. How happy this makes me, everybody. So I think we are going to do the Cellar Door sequel. That's probably going to happen. I'm not sure I've finished going through all the stories. Guys out there, did I miss anybody? Oh, I didn't talk about Ryan's stories. So Ryan's first story is the Norman Inversion. Again, the not too distant future where the world has clones is a very common thing, and the clone is usually subservient to the Ryan says the author character comes back demonically possessed and very famous from the first Cellar Door. That's awesome. Ryan, do you want to co-write one of the stories for Cellar Door 2 with me? Because that sounds awesome. Yeah, that's terrific. We're gonna talk. Back to the Norman Inversion. In Ryan's story, clones are very common and they're very subservient to the original. And this very unscrupulous main character named Lex d'Argent gets his dream job operating a memory manipulating machine that people use to erase bad memories, erase good ones, put in good ones, and Lex uses to climb the social and political ladder to the very top. And it is just mortifying what he does to people and how he ruins their lives. And the twist with the clones is great. That's the Norman Inversion. The other story that Ryan and Matt did, and I got to give Ryan and Matt some credit here. They had done this story and they said it wasn't good enough. And so they scrapped it and Matt restarted the artwork from scratch. And I said, guys, is it going to be ready? And they said, we don't know yet, so don't promise it. And then the other day, Matt says, it's ready. Now, as I might have mentioned to you, I wanted all of Cellar Door done before we did the campaign because I don't want another situation with Magnificent where it's 2 years later. I want to have a great product, excite you about a great product, and then give you that great product, and then move on to the next one. Hopefully, we'll build a following as we go, and everything we do will get a little bit bigger. Well, Matt and Ryan said to me, you know what, Carmelo, we would rather get our one finished story out there than delay everybody on another one, so hold off. But they're done. So Skinned is very scary. It's in the not too distant future where people have ocular implants kind of along like the next level of Google glasses. And it allows them to kind of control how they see things and how people see them. And in a world where reality is dependent on this technology, a group finds themselves pursued by some kind of malevolent force. Is it a demon or is it a computer virus? Or is there a difference anymore? That's Skinned. There are parts of it that are just, they're going to make you want to gouge your eyes out. They're so gory. So I think you're really going to love it. It's really scary. I promise you, sci-fi horror. Skinned is sci-fi horror in its hardest form. Let me take a quick spin, if you don't mind, through, you guys forgive me, I've been drinking, it's late. Let me have a look at the Kickstarter campaign and see if I can figure out if I missed anybody's stories. Let's see, I got, oh, how could I forget? Grim Jim Litz. Jimmy Litz went to college with me. He has been, ever since college and before, drawing a regular webcomic called The Grims, about these two hilarious Grim Reapers. And I said, you know, Jimmy, do you want to do one? And he had a horror story inspired by all the scores of people he sees walking to work every day downtown with their heads down and their umbrellas up, like they're in some kind of cult. And he wrote a story about what kind of secret cult lives in the rain under these umbrellas. And again, he's got a kind of cartoony, fun style. So when he starts drawing these ultra-violent things, it is very disarming and very disconcerting. So highly recommend checking out the Umbrella People. Also want to give a shout out to Sam Diaz. Sam Diaz, another customer from Chimera's Comics, was coming to 24-hour Comics Day for years, and he did such elaborate oil paintings that he had never finished a completed story, but he left me with 5 pages. And he said I could do what I wanted with them. Well, I asked him, I said, hey, can I put him in Cellar Door? He got super excited. He was super into it. We worked together, and I took those 5 pages and I wrote a story from them in the Mighty Marvel method. It was very exciting for me to copy Stan Lee's method. If you're unfamiliar, the Mighty Marvel method is where the artist does the drawings first and the writer puts the words and the dialogues in afterward. So that was the first time I'd ever really done anything like that, and I thought that was very cool. That was a very unique opportunity. His artwork is super surrealist. It is super dark. It is probably the most, maybe next to the original Cellar Door, probably the most Lovecraftian story of them all. Absolutely loved it. Now, I think that's all the stories that I've got that are inside Cellar Door. Anybody with questions? Anybody want to talk about the stories or their favorite creator? Anybody got somebody they want to recommend for me to for the next book? Let me know. Any of the projects I named sound exciting? What are you guys most interested in? A 24-hour Kickstarter, fake news, magnificent prequel? Let me know. I want to do some stuff that you guys like. So in any case, I'd like to, we're going to pick a winner in just a minute for the original artwork, but I want to give everybody kind of last call. If you have not backed Cellar Door and you want to win some of Guy's original artwork, you have to go to the campaign and pledge before this live stream ends. We're at 240 backers right now. So for a pledge as low as $1, you can get entered into the drawing to win this. But you got to pledge, because that's where I'm picking the winners from. I'm going to pick a number 1 to 240. No, I've not already picked it. I'm going to use an online number picker. So before we get to the prize, I'd like to take one more moment to congratulate my brother Nicholas on The Crusader. What I like about the Crusader novel that Nicholas wrote comes out next week. You can pre-order it tomorrow on chimerascomics.com. You can meet him and he'll sign the book for you next week. If you use Cellar Door to get it as an add-on, I'll let you pick up the add-on before the rest of your rewards next week. And anybody who buys a copy of this book will get 20% off their whole purchase at my store that day. So please come in and support Nicholas's work. What I like about The Crusader as a superhero story is I'm a big fan of superheroes, and most of them have cool origin stories, but you know how they end. And then they become a hero. And then Smallville, and then he becomes Superman. Smallville was a cool show, but you kind of always knew, and then he becomes Superman. So in a sense, nothing they did felt like it had stakes, because you were really sure where everybody was going to end up. And in The Crusader, Nicholas has wrote a story that you don't know where he's going to end up. And he's following the path of a superhero origin, but you don't know that he's going to end there, right? He's got all these influences competing on him. And you have a situation now where you've got a character who is trying to do his best, and he's trying to figure it out, but it's not promised that he's going to become some kind of savior. So definitely think you should check out The Crusader. I think it's a lot of fun. It's a young adult novel, so it's going to be an easy read for some of you older readers. But that's a good thing. If you're like me, I read all day at work, long contracts and legal documents. I like fun stuff. My boss said to me the other day, "I'm going to give you a book on UBTI," and I said to him, "Do they make it in 22 pages with artwork?" And he said no, and then he fired me. That's not true. He did not fire me, but he did laugh. So anyways, that's it for The Crusader. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what to expect from Kickstarter fulfillment. Here's how it's going to shake out. Tomorrow, Kickstarter will charge your cards, and I will work on a survey. Every backer is going to get a survey. You have to fill out the survey, please. That is where we get your address, your email address. That's how I know where to send you rewards. That's how I know what name to put in the book. If you get your name in the book, or if we're thanking you in the book, you've got to fill it out. If you've chosen to get an add-on, or you think you might want an add-on, that's where you're going to get to select your add-ons. You can add more money there too if you don't have enough of a credit. If you've already increased your pledge, you'll have a credit. Please fill out your surveys. I will try to send them as soon as possible so I can get the ball rolling. Once I've got those names, we have a little bit of finishing to do on the artwork now, because I promised you as a reward that some people would have their name in a story. I'm going to have to go through and tweak some of the lettering inside Cellar Door to put some of those names in. And that's the only part of the comic that's not finished yet. And then I will send the digital copies immediately to our printer, who will provide me with a proof. And if the proof looks good, then we'll have, I think, 4 to 6 weeks before the printer sends me the original copies. It takes us 2 weeks, though, to get your money from Kickstarter, which means I won't be able to pay the printer and get the books ordered, for at least that long. And then, depending on how the proof approval goes. So we're looking at early to mid-February, but possibly late February right now. And I'll keep you guys posted as we go. But in the meantime, if you backed our Chimera's Comics community, you'll be getting your rewards from that. So something to keep you guys busy for a little bit of a while. I lost my train of thought for a second, so I'm going to circle back around to fulfillment. That's the timeline. The digital rewards I will send right away. After I'm done tweaking the comic book with those names I told you about, I will start sending out the digital rewards. We'll get those good. Many of you have already received your milestone bonus rewards if you pledged before a certain point in the campaign. Some of you are eligible for stretch goals. If you pledged 40 or above, you'll get Brian Fisher's art print of the Bone Man along with your rewards. So please, if you're on the fence, if you pledged $20 and you're on the fence about getting the hardcover, hopefully that print sweetens the pot. Make sure you get in on that before it ends. You got till midnight, guys. This campaign ends in just a few hours. So technically, we only have 4 minutes left. I'd love to hear your questions, guys. If you guys have more things to say, more things you want me to address, I'd love to talk about it. Oh, it looks like Danny's down for Cellar Door 2 and for 24-hour-a-day Kickstarter. So I think Cellar Door 2 is going to happen, guys. Let's see if I can get my wife to have any more nightmares to write about. That didn't sound right. Anyway, you have 4 minutes left to pledge before I'll give away the free artwork. You have till midnight, of course, to pledge it all. But if you want to win some of Guy Casper's artwork, please throw in at least $1 in just a little bit. I guess I just wanted to end with talking a little bit about our goal here. We hit our goal overnight last night. I went to bed, we were about 10,500. I woke up to just over 11,000, and we killed it today. We're just under 12 right now. And I thought to myself, hey, did I do something wrong? Did I set the goal too high? And obviously, most of this goal is driven by the scope of the project. The length of this book requires the printing cost a certain amount, and the creators, I personally had to pay to produce some of this stuff that's in here, and I know a lot of the folks who worked on it put a lot into it. This is the project just required it, right? And then with this many backers, that's a lot of shipping costs. Kickstarter takes their cut, credit card cuts, and it just kept adding up. And then you hit a certain point where you need advertisements in order to attract enough people to hit that goal, and then you have to add the advertising costs in. It kind of snowballs. Obviously, we did not set the goal too high. We hit our goal. We exceeded our goal, so we definitely set it fine. I guess if I could, next time I do this, whatever I project we're going to hit or need, I'm going to try to pace myself to fund like 3+ weeks in, so that last week is about stretch goals. And the reason is because this got stressful. We had a great start. I wanted to do 1/3 in the first 3 days, and we blew that out of the water. I wanted to do 1/3 in the middle 22 days. We blew that out of the water. But we went according to plan, and my plan was to hit 1/3 in the last 3 days, which we did. That was probably not a great plan on my part because it made the last 3 days very stressful for me. However, I will say that I'm glad I did it, because we did magnificent. We had a $6,000 goal. We raised $8,000, and that was a few years ago. And I've really committed to growing and building and engaging with an audience so I can do this sustainably over the last year. And so to me, I had to go bigger. Cellar Door is a physically bigger book, but it's also a more ambitious project because there's so many creators involved. And it has a wider audience appeal, I think, than even Superheroes does. And the price is commensurate to that. And as a creator, that's what you want to do, is be constantly pushing. Does that mean my next Kickstarter is going to be bigger than 11,000? Probably not, unless it needs to be. I think it's probably going to be Fake News, and that's going to be a 22-page comic book. It's just much cheaper to print. It's probably going to be a $2,000 or $3,000 Kickstarter. Hopefully we do very well and get a lot of people interested. But as far as the goal goes, it'll be commensurately lower. Magnificent Genesis is going to be bigger than Cellar Door. Kind of always trying to do more. Size doesn't always matter, but Magnificent, the first one is 66 pages of story and then bonus material. That's 3 comic books. Whereas Magnificent Genesis feels like a complete story arc. It's going to be the equivalent of 7 comic books, 154 pages. So it just feels like, as a creator, we're growing and expanding and doing more cool things. So that's my musings on our goal. I think we did a good job. All right, everybody, last call. You have until the time I pull up the random number generator to back Cellar Door on Kickstarter. If you haven't already done so, go to bit.ly/openthecellar. If you're with us on Kickstarter, you're already there. If you're with us on Facebook, it's in the comments. Oh, Rob O'Neill just joined. Rob's one of my friends from Cult Classic Horror. I just recorded the Cult Classic Action show with them last night, the second episode, where we reviewed Commando. I'm a big fan of their show, and now I get to be a part of it with their patron-only Cult Classic Action. So very excited about that. Like I said, guys, last call. I'm going to pull up the random number picker now. Right now, I've got 240 backers. So if you're on the fence, a pledge as low as $1 gets you into this contest for Guy's original artwork. So here it goes. Random number picker. What Google has for me. Oh, good. Google does it. Minimum is 1. Maximum is 240. Going twice. And 241 backers. All right. We're going up to 241. I'm going to pick the number now. Okay. The winner of the original Cellar Door artwork is backer number 138. Let's see who the heck that is. Head on over. What did I say? 138? All right. Okay, well, this is anticlimactic, but the winner is guest 401731367. I mean, I understand if you don't want to give Kickstarter your name, but it does make it hard to announce the winner. So congratulations, backer 138. I really hope you fill out your reward survey because I will be asking you for your name and your address to send you your prize. Everybody, I got to tell you, I'm out of stretch goals. I'm out of artwork. I'm out of stories. I'm tapped. This campaign was exhausting. It was so much fun. And all of the Cellar Door creators, a special message to you. You guys were great. You listened to my messages. You followed instructions. You were cooperative. You were energetic and engaged. You did everything I asked of you and more. You brought so much creativity to this. And frankly, all of you are so talented. I hope my work running this campaign honors your work creatively, because that's how I think of it. This is how I do your work honor, is by working hard in return. So, 4 hours to pledge to Cellar Door. I'm out of bells and whistles, but the book rocks. So if you want the book, join the campaign. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the questions. Donovan, thanks for asking about our future Kickstarters. I'm going to go lay down. First, we're going to say goodbye to YouTube. Goodbye, YouTube. Good night.